Hello, and welcome to Recapping with Delora
and Ashley.
Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Recapping Podcast.
Also, rate, review, and subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast platform. We're on all the things.
We want to hear your thoughts on the movies and shows we review.
Leave us a comment on Apple Podcasts or our YouTube channel, and we will read them during the show.
Or reach out to us on social media. We love talking all things entertainment and pop culture with you.
Thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you. Hey, Ashley.
Hey, girl. Hey.
How are you doing?
I'm good. Women's History Month continues. So I just feel as a woman, as a Black woman, I feel loved. So even if only amongst us.
Yeah, intersectionality is definitely a important conversation. And I'm excited that our next film that we'll be talking about is in the realm of women filmmakers. Celine Song for Past Lives. It is a romance/drama, 1 hour and 46 minutes, rated PG-13. Here's a quick summary. Nora and Haesung, two deeply connected childhood friends, are risks apart after Nora's family migrates from South Korea. Decades later, they are reunited for one fateful week as they confront destiny, love, and the choices that make a life. Cast, we have Greta Lee as Nora, we have Teo Yo as Haesung, and John Magro as author. Celine Song is both the director and writer. Rotten Tomatoes, the critics gave this film 95%. Audience score is 84%, and Google users gave 88%. Ashley, what is your grade for Past Lives?
I give this film a B. In terms of kind of the rom-com genre, if that's what we're painting, the brush we're painting this film with a bit, or rom-com dramedy, maybe more accurate.
You just said drama romance, but
yeah, like rom dramedy. I don't know. But whatever we're painting this with, I got some of the like nostalgic feel of like potential love, right? And like childhood nostalgia of crushes and things like that. Like I ruminated in that a bit as I watched it and felt that. But it's definitely not, your typical like cheesy let's get into the real romance side of things type of film. It was very realistic. It was very grounded. It was very much almost like you're getting a snapshot into a time in someone's life and getting pulled back out of it. So for that, I really kind of enjoyed it because I don't always love the super sticky sweet rom-coms anymore the way that I used to, with that kind of like fairy tale happily ever after. It doesn't resonate always the same. So I enjoyed the fact that this was a kind of a little bit of a different take with like some level of like nostalgia wrapped into it. So that's kind of my feelings as I was watching it. What about you?
I thought this film was visually gorgeous and riveting. I felt like the writer and director allowed the scenes to breathe a lot, actually.
Yes, the pacing,
but then there was also tension that it wasn't super palpable, but I felt it. I felt and understood the tension that was there, and not to say tension in any type of bad way, but just that connection between the two main characters. I thought this film was acted well, and I gave this movie an A-. I think it was really good for food for thought. I think that's where I really found appreciation for this film. All right, so let's start with our spoiler alert. It is Y2K, Ashley. Okay, 2000. Competitive 12-year-old classmates, Nayoung and Haesung develop a friendship and a little something more. Nayoung mom sets up a date between the two. Young's family is preparing to migrate to Canada from South Korea. I think it's interesting that her family is in the arts. I love that. You don't really get a lot of that migrant story of like going from one place to explore the arts in another. Like it's always usually doctor, engineer, or things along those lines. Those are the narratives I'm used to seeing.
Well, I love you say that too, because of the fact that I also get the sense that a lot of times when we're watching immigrant stories, there's a level of poverty, and you could tell that they weren't impoverished, right? Like they were
Yes.
moving for the sake of wanting to do different things and wanting to do more. It even came up in a conversation between the mom and Hae Song's mom
Yes.
about why their motivations, right? And it's like, well, different is sometimes just good. You know, it's not that we have to, it's not that we are in need of it. This is a choice. And I do think that that is a great
Mm,
differentiator in a lot of immigrant stories that we do hear or see about on screen.
absolutely. Speaking of the migrant story, Young and her sister choose their names. I think that's a fascinating experience that you don't really see that much on screen, changing your name to be more palatable. You know what I mean? And Naesung chooses Nora Moon. Have you ever made a connection in your youth that's stuck with you until today?
Absolutely. The majority of my friendships have been lifelong friendships from elementary school on, right? Like I even say you are actually one of my later friends because you came in
Yes.
grad school, right?
I'm surprised you let me in the fold,
You're
Ashley.
hilarious. I try never to drop, only add, you know? So,
But Drake said, no new friends
yeah, but I'm
though.
not, me and Drake are very different people.
Touche.
Very different. And I think there, and I just said this to one of my longtime friends who I had a chance to hang with over the weekend. There's something about, and we even talk about this with like films and books, the things that capture you in your childhood stay in your heart forever.
Girl.
Whether those are relationships, whether those are memories, whether those for better or for worse parenting,
Yeah.
you know, so many things. And I feel like childhood is such a pivotal time. Your eyes are wide open, right? Your heart is wide open and you're so
The
pure.
the idea of children being impressionable is so true. It's so
Yes,
true because it really does stick with you. And it's part of the foundation of who you are as a person.
absolutely. So yes, I would say everything everyone that I connected with who really took a place, took a foothold in my heart still has that foothold for sure.
It was so sweet, the friendship and then the blooming of the crush between the two classmates that we see in the front half of this movie. I think about myself and think about like the crushes I had as a young kid, and I can still think of those boys and still, warms my heart. Like, oh, he was so fine then. You couldn't tell me nothing.
Absolutely.
It's always fascinating to grow up and we'll talk about this shortly, being able to see how people are doing on social media and to see how people evolved and
Life be
people
life and
people make choices, which is an overarching theme. I feel like a part of this film, like the paths we take based off of the choices we make. Little Hae Song is heartbroken, and honestly, he's unable to really express himself. But what do we expect from a 12-year-old little boy? But he was having a hard time with Nayoung's migration, and I was heartbroken for both of them actually, but more so for him.
do you think it's
So,
harder to leave or harder to stay in situations like that? Is it harder to be the one who's going or harder to be the one who's getting kind of left behind?
first of all, bomb ass question. Okay. I think it's a little bit of both, frankly, because when people start new things, you grow much faster. right? New places, new things. And then for the people who stay, there's always that constant concern of like, am I missing out because I'm here and I don't have the ability to be where you are. But then you see the consequences or the void that the person who left leaves.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the person who leaves don't understand their impact on people.
I think it's harder to stay, if I'm honest. I think it's harder to have the ghost like in your environment, in your surroundings, right? Like, oh, this is the place we used to do this, or this is they used to sit in this seat at school, or you know what I'm saying? Like to
Right.
leave and go have a fresh start. You may miss them, but I don't feel like you have the constant reminders necessarily. But it also depends on what the circumstances are, because also sometimes it can be easier to stay if you have such a great support system. You know, because sometimes if you're leaving, you could be leaving and flying the nest, and then it's like, well, I don't have what I need to kind of move forward and get over my emotions. Because even though life keeps going, you still got to deal with the emotional
But
situation.
when you leave, you have the opportunity to reinvent yourself, right?
Yes, you do.
And when you stay, sometimes memory is long, right?
Man. So I say I think it's kind of harder to stay. Like I'm gonna be Nae Young. Take me on the America.
Canada first.
Canada
Yes.
first. Toronto. You're right.
Toronto. We time jump 12 years later, and Nora is talking to her mom, and she doesn't even remember Hey Song's name. She's like, who's that little boy I used to hang out with? And with the invention of Facebook, you have the opportunity to look up everybody from your past. You and I are part of the generation where Facebook was created first for college students.
Yep.
Before
Exclusive, guys.
exclusive,
Exclusive. You had to
you
be
had to
invited.
have you had to be invited and you had to have a college email to sign up.
Mm, those were the days.
And when I tell you the rabbit holes I went down trying to find people I went to elementary and middle school to see where are they now.
Wow.
What was that like for you?
Well, I was in high school when they opened it up to high schoolers. I was a senior. And so I remember asking my best friend at the time who had scored an invite. I was like, "Can you invite me?" And at first he was like, "No." And I was like, "You better invite me onto Facebook. Like, what is your problem?" And so I remember those early days being like glued to it and like trying to figure it out. That's why I say I'm so glad that we were the generation we were, because a lot of the crap that I probably posted at that time was so ridiculous, was so unnecessary, would have
Yeah.
probably gotten me into trouble if I were a youth today, you know? Because
Easy.
you just get, it was a new thing that you kind of got obsessed over a little bit. And oh, it's not something
Oh
my
yeah.
parents have access to. So let me go.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like, was not necessarily the
A
best thing
lot
to do
of
for us.
blurry, drunken nights.
Yeah, it
I
just
mean,
was.
people
Mm-mm.
still post that today, but it was really big. First
Yeah.
Hey Song was in the military, which is mandatory for South Korea. It's mandatory in a lot of countries. I mean, we live in the United States where it's voluntary, right? But that's
Besides
not
the
the case,
draft. Yeah.
right? And we haven't had that in decades, and
Hmm.
hopefully, knocking on wood, no time soon. But we're looking skyward these days. Shout out to the aliens. Uh, Nora barely remembers Haesong's name, but Haesong was out here doing the investigative work, trying to find Ne Young. So much so that she found him commenting on her father's Facebook, and they were able to connect over Skype. Their connection was instant and deep. Ashley, have you ever had connections with people that you lost touch with and just instantly picked up where you left off?
Yeah, I think that's been the case with friends who, not necessarily to the extent where I don't know anything necessarily about what's going on with them, completely lost touch, but definitely not as close, right? And then you reconnect, and then it's like, okay, well, the trust is still there. The soul tie, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, is still there, where you're able to just easily fall back into that level of intimacy. because that's what it ultimately is. It's like I have this level of intimacy with this person where it's so easy to just be myself and let them in, that you don't necessarily have that with like new people you meet or newer friends. Because to be honest, too, depending on what era you meet somebody, is almost kind of the era in which they get you, if that makes sense. Like sometimes
True.
I find myself like when I'm around my friends who I've known for a long time, I fall back into a version of myself that I feel like I was with them, you know? And then your people that you're friends with from like work, they may get a different version of you. And then your friends who,
Yeah.
you know, so I feel like she was able to probably be, and he was able to be like some of the most authentic versions of themselves since they had known each other since they were little kids.
What they say, friends that you can have low social batteries with, you know,
The
and
expectations are different.
they are different. It's like your true self. And they spend their free time connecting with one another, even with the time difference. They connected so much and so deeply that Nora was pretty much like, let's pump the brakes. At this rate, we're not able to see each other in over a year. I am spending my time looking up flights when I need to be working on getting my Pulitzer. I love that she has always been ambition. As a 12-year-old girl, she says she wanted to be a Nobel Literary Prize winner. At this time in New York City, the Pulitzer's a goal of hers. The part that broke my heart is when Hae Sung was like, it took me 12 years to find my friend. But he listened and he said, okay. Did his reaction make sense to you? Like, I feel like he should have fought harder.
It's cultural, I think, too, to a certain extent. You didn't really notice either of them having big emotions, you know, big moments in that way, but you could tell they were both hurt and sad. Um,
Yes,
and I think that it would have made a difference if he fought for her? No, because I think inevitably, even if you are hurt, sometimes you just know that something's for the best. And neither of them were going to be able to change the circumstances. I can't come to New York for over a year. I can't come to Seoul for over a year. What else are we going
right.
to do? Just continue to waste each other's time? Kudos to both of them, in my opinion, for recognizing that and having the strength to let go, because
I
that
agree.
is hard.
That's real. That's real. And you know me, I'm all about a woman having her independence and seeing her dreams and not waiting for no man. I mean, frankly, although Hae Song was the sweetest.
He was. I mean, if they had been able to figure it out and been able to, because my thing was, if there is someone who needs to give in, it's Hey Song, right? You can be an engineer
Yes. Yes.
anywhere.
Anywhere.
She
Exactly.
needs to be in New York to be the playwright that she ultimately wants to be. I get that. So my thing was like, well, if anybody's gonna bend, sir, it should be you. But he was so integrated in his culture,
Yep.
and that's where he grew up, and that's what the path he was on. To me, there was no changing those circumstances. So good for y'all to, not waste years of each other's lives, much as it hurt.
Nora actually attended an artist retreat and meets Author. In meeting Author, she tells him about the Korean word inyon, which means providence or fate. She said it's based out of Buddhism and reincarnation. It's when people who have something between them in past lives bump into each other, and people who get married has 8,000 layers of inyon over 8,000 lifetimes. Have you ever heard of this before? And if not, what were your thoughts about this belief?
I had not heard of this before this film, so thank you for that knowledge drop. And what did I think of it? I mean, I think it's a very romantic ideal in terms of your connections with people and why you navigate certain relationships the way that you do, right? It's like this romanticized ideal of certain things have a purpose and certain things make sense because of what we did and what we meant to each other previously. And I think that's very sweet. Like, I like to think that there is such a thing as like fate and karma and things like that that matter and make what you do matter. I don't think it's all just nonsense. So,
I agree. I like that there is a sense of destiny and attraction that brings you to people at different points of your life.
yep.
And I always am fascinated by the people that you bump into throughout life that you might have known previously. Because, like, what are the freaking odds? Like, for example, I think the most recent example, a friend of mine in college, I was at Disney World in the evening waiting for the Slinky ride. And I ran into a friend from college standing in line. I haven't seen this woman in almost 10 years.
Yeah.
What are the odds that we run
Right.
into each other in this space?
Right. Yeah. It's always crazy.
It's always crazy to me. I do not believe in reincarnation, but I am fascinated by the ideas of past lives, or even if, Marvel takes it another level, but multiverses, you know what I mean? Like, oh, everything everywhere all at once.
Yes.
We're like just one iteration of life that's, compared to however many that's going on right now in different galaxies and universes far, far away.
Correct.
I also find it fascinating because I remember this research came out several years ago that a lot of love matches are primarily based on proximity.
I 1,000% believe that. 1,000%.
Because I am a romantic. Maybe it's the Cancer in me because I don't know, nurturing. I care about stuff. I'm joking. I would always think like, oh my goodness, what if your soulmate is literally across the world?
I've had this
How would you ever
conversation.
meet?
I had this conversation with so many people still in the dating world, right? Of like, are you open to long distance meetings and meetups and finding your person in that way? And so many people are like, well, no, I don't think it's gonna work, or there needs to be a timeline for us to be in the same city. And my thing is always like, why not just be open to whatever comes?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
why eliminate it before you even give it a chance to grow roots? You know what I'm saying?
I agree. I'm
It's
right there with
so
you.
limiting. It's such a limiting perspective to me. So, guys, anybody out there still in the dating world, give that long distance boo thing a shot. Okay? You never know what can happen.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. Even in my relationship, we were long distance for several years. And I think it was good for us because I knew how we were together. But then when we were separated, I was always concerned like, what if we are
Grow
different
apart.
when we come back together? And we never had that problem. I mean, we've been together, it's going to be 12 years this year. And even during the pandemic, when most people hated their spouses, I still to this day love hanging out with my family. Like, we
And
love
that's
each
so
other.
important. I
You
think
know what
those
I
are the
mean?
relationships that stand the test of time. Is like, I don't just love you, I like you. I like you a
Yes.
lot. I respect you,
And I'm
you know?
also myself with you, which isn't always the
Mhm.
case because sometimes people are different in the dating phase than they are when it's like, oh, we in this. We in this. Back to Nora's conversation with Arthur, do you believe in it? And she's like, well, it's used as a seduction tactic. And I was like,
Little
is
game.
Arthur a rebound, Ashley?
I don't think Arthur was necessarily a rebound because what she and Haesong had was never tangible for real, if you think about it. Like,
But it was emotional.
there was an emotional connection, but there was the tangibility of it, the day-to-day grind of it. Like, it was more of a fantasy than it ever was, in my opinion, a real relationship. Because you can fantasize about people, you have the sunny days, but can you stand the rain? New edition. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
unless you can form a bond with somebody that can really be tested in a relationship, I don't feel like it is necessarily a rebound, because what am I rebounding from? If anything, I cared about you. I wanted to see if we could make something work, but clearly it was never going to work. Whereas Arthur, when she meets him, it's like, this is a flesh and blood human being. We're working towards some similar goals, being writers. Why not see if this thing has a shot?
Well, Arthur talks about this in the final phase of the film, but I want to bring it up now. He said that they slept together. They moved in together because they lived in New York to save rent, and then got married for a green card. Is this not a marriage of convenience?
When the way he phrased it, I definitely was like, do y'all love each other? But I think it was more his insecurity talking than possibly the reality. Like, everybody goes through shit. She, at the time, clearly needed to get married sooner than she may have wanted to, but it didn't mean she had to marry you. I'm sure she had plenty of options. She's a beautiful woman living in New York City. She could have had her
Yeah.
pick of men. You know what I'm saying? So I think it was more so him speaking out of, because he even says, like, I think you love me, but sometimes I can't believe it. So I think it was more so like his insecurity about their relationship than it was a reality of, like, she only married him to be able to stay in the country. There were other
Mhm.
options and opportunities, I'm sure.
Well, we get 12 more years. I have to admit, when movies and shows do this, it really annoys me sometimes because, especially if we're talking about a romance between two people, I just feel like so much time is lost based off of either miscommunication, in this situation, distance. Like, a lot can happen in the 24 years. You know what I mean? Like,
But that's life. That's why I say I feel like this film is so grounded in reality, because that's life. Like, the decisions you make have consequences. Every decision you make is a loss or a gain of some kind, right? And so, because you decided to stay in New York and Hey Song decided to stay in Seoul, we never got a chance to figure out what this thing could be. And life keeps going. I'm with somebody else, you're with somebody else. That's just the way shit goes.
well, Haesung finally makes a trip to New York. I'm like, is this really your first time in New York after the 12 years of reconnecting?
Yes. And only because he had just broken up with his girl.
Exactly. I thought it was funny because his friends were like, man, it's supposed to rain the whole time.
That is the worst, though, when you have a trip and you're like, damn.
Nora is officially a playwright. And according to Haesung, he's just average. Did you expect more out of him?
I don't know what the criteria is for success in Korea, because I'm like, by
Mm,
American standards, you're successful. Like,
exactly.
I
He
don't know
still
what
lives
else
at
you think.
home, but that's a cultural thing,
Exactly. But
apparently.
he was saying,
Yeah.
like, in terms of him and his girlfriend, like, they weren't even necessarily broken up. They're on a break because he feels like he needs more financially or materially to be worthy of marriage. And I'm like, well, damn. What
Hmm.
does that mean? What else could you be doing or should you be doing so that you feel like you're worthy of marriage to her or to anybody, I guess. Both him and Arthur were a little insecure when you look
Yeah.
at it.
What did you think about their meeting face to face for the first time?
I thought we was about to have an affair. You know what I'm saying? I'm like,
Ashley, I was like, am I watching this movie and am I rooting for an affair? Like,
after all these years, all this built up tension and anticipation, I
because
thought we were
there
about to have a
was
full blown
something
affair.
there, though. There was something there.
She
There
hugged him
was
like 3 times.
there was chemistry.
By the way, I love seeing Greta in this role because it's the first role I've seen her in where she is speaking Korean and she is in her culture. Everything else, she's
Ooh,
been pulled out of her culture and just in, like, mainstream America. So I loved seeing her in this setting. But yeah, I thought we were about to have an affair, Delora. I thought this was the path we're going down. I felt bad for Arthur. Like, when Arthur had that whole discussion with her in bed about, like, I am the guy you leave for
girl.
your childhood sweetheart. I was
When
like,
he said
whoever wrote this
the
script,
epic story of Hae Song and and Nora. I was like, sir,
I guess it's
he's
supposed to
not
speak.
lying.
No, I guess it's supposed to speak to the writer in him, right? Where it's like I can
Yeah.
see the story beyond my own perspective,
Yeah.
because to have that and to say it out loud
Yeah.
is a lot. I'm like, you are speaking to like the audience's soul that yes, this is what we're thinking. Like
Yes.
the one scene, especially where he was like wrapped around her body
You
and
know, that
asking
was
like,
John Lennon and Yoko Ono coded.
so I
It's
understand because I
the
remember that picture.
the
I
Rolling Stone
remember
picture.
I remember that picture and I was just like, this is so funny to me in terms of the dynamic because it
Yes.
does seem like you are saying what we're all thinking as the audience, that yes, you are like just the placeholder husband until the love of her life showed up and they could finally be together.
Yeah. I think
But I
it's
wasn't
also,
rooting for it.
I wasn't rooting for it. I was more curious on like what's going to happen. So apparently there were missed encounters. Nora, an author, actually was in Korea and she reached out to Haesung and he did not reply.
Because again, it just shows when he was with his girl, he was cool, he was solid. Now it's like, I need to see about this untapped potential.
Oh, you think it was that?
That's what I think. It was like, now that I am single, now that I am out of this relationship for a little minute, let me see if there was something to what could have been.
Well, Nora told Arthur after the first day, she was like, "You were right. He came to see me."
Yep.
When Arthur asked Nora, do you find him attractive? She said, "I don't think so." And he was like, "I don't think so means yes."
Arthur deserved an award for the way that he handled
Patience.
this entire situation. He has risen to a level that I am aspiring to in terms
He,
of not just patience, but like extending grace and love to a
yes.
romantic partner
Yeah.
enough to let them feel their way through a situation like this. Because this, for me, would be extremely hurtful.
It's giving what a Marion was supposed to give. Do
What?
you remember when April went on to his bandmate?
Oh, it's a little fierce.
Yes, before she went to Tay Diggs.
Oh man. But that was that they felt something about that felt vindictive.
Yes.
It felt like stab, 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 stab. Whereas
But
this,
Amarion was acting unbothered
he
because
was
he knew what it
completely
was.
unbothered. He was completely unbothered. The unbothering of somebody who I can't remember who somebody recently said, why would I be upset about somebody taking a seat that I left, like I got up from? So that was on Marion in that situation. But with this, I mean, this is his wife. And he did
Yeah.
not have to give her the grace to be like, because even when she came home and he was like, hello, my love, how was it? I'm like, you know how many husbands would have been like, so you're not going by yourself? We
Right.
need to meet up with him. You know what I'm saying? And like he was just sitting there playing his little video games. I'm like, Arthur, you've transcended to a level I need to get to, baby.
Yeah. And to your point, he said, you make my life so much bigger. I wonder if I do the same. And he talked about them having a boring love story compared to this, as you mentioned, the childhood sweetheart. I want to talk about Nora's relationship with her Korean heritage. In her conversation with her husband, she just kept saying, "Oh, Haesung is so Korean, and I'm Korean when I'm with him, but then I'm not." And as a Black woman watching this, I felt like the conversation was a bit weird because I feel like it was a rejection of her culture in efforts to assimilate to Western whiteness.
Hmm. Hmm. I
It felt like she was trying to distance herself because she's like, "Oh, he's so Korean and and I only speak Korean to him and my mom." But I don't know. It was kind of weird for me. I don't know. What did you think about that conversation?
I think I honestly saw it more as like someone who it has this battle between dual identities where she only grew up in Korea until she was 12 and then she became Korean American. And even like
Yeah.
when we go back and we watch things like Crazy Rich Asians, and you have the situation where the mom is like, you're not Chinese, you're Chinese American, and there's a
Yeah.
difference, right? I
Yeah.
think there's a certain assimilation that all minorities and immigrant groups have to a certain extent, unless you are so insulated in that community when you move here. Like, you know, you live in a Chinatown or you live somewhere where you can be completely inundated in your culture, your language, all of that.
Yeah.
There's a certain assimilation that happens. So I think now with her being, you know, she's in her 30s at this point in the film when she's married and talking to us about this, it is probably like, well, I'm getting this like blast from my past, this close proximity to my culture in a way that I don't get anymore here. Because even she said, I have
Hmm.
Korean friends here, but they're Korean American. You know, they're not from and living in Korea. And so I just think there's a difference. And it was interesting hearing her talk out those differences. Because again, we're Black Americans, but we didn't grow up in Africa and then
Right.
move over here and then have somebody from Africa come over and visit us. And we're like, oh yeah, that like is a callback to my African heritage. Shit, I still don't know
Well,
what tribe
even
I'm from.
then, we're Midwestern also, which we aren't Southern Black either. So
Yeah. So I just think that's what it was for me when I heard her talking about it, was like, you know, I have these dual identities and I feel more myself and less myself when I'm with him, because I realize I do still have this heritage, but I'm less authentic to it than he is, right? Because he's still so of it and in it.
yeah. Okay, I can see it. I love that he remembers so much about her. He asked her, "What award are you shooting for now?" And she said the Tony. I want to know what your thoughts are when it comes to these characters before we conclude this recap. Nora as a character, and then Haesung.
I love Nora as a character. I think she is so, I don't know what the best way to say is. Maybe she feels very grounded as a character, right? Because she's not hasty in her decision making.
Yeah,
She didn't throw her life away for the sake of a whim or anything, you know?
yeah,
And she is ambitious, and I love ambitious women. I love women who are
same.
living in their dreams and doing things that excite them in terms of their career, and also being able to recognize and realize that I'm living the life that I chose. You know what I'm saying? Like Arthur asking her, you know, are you happy? Like as if she's just settling. This is the life that I was meant to be living. You know what I'm saying? So like, yes, this 12-year-old that you fell in love with, she still exists and she was a person, but we're grown adults now and I'm married and this is the life that I'm living now. And I respect that and I love that life. So I think she was such a grounded, well-rounded woman that I enjoyed as a character. Hey Song, I didn't feel as connected to, just because again, I feel like we're following Nora's journey more than he is.
Yes,
Um, but I got the sense that he was a little less settled in his life than she was. I think he had still held on to this crush a lot longer than she had. And so I was glad that he got a chance to come to New York and have this conversation, because I hope that once he does, he can possibly let go of their relationship in a way that may allow him to be free to really move forward in his life. You know, like I think that
yeah.
she may have been a long time ago, like, well, this was cute and we loved each other at one point when we were kids, but I'm grown now and I'm married and I'm doing this thing. And he may have always wondered, well, what if? So I hope that he got released from that.
What did you think about the husband and the friend meeting? Because I thought it was hilarious.
Well, first of all, you had the language barrier, right? So that was
Yes.
interesting because I mean, the husband was trying to learn some Korean, but he wasn't fluent. And bless his heart, he wanted to learn it so he could know what she was saying when she was dreaming. I was like, oh my God, you are special, you know? And but I did, when they went to the bar
Yeah.
and they were speaking without him, I felt some type of way.
Did you? Honestly,
Absolutely.
low key, I was thinking, I'm like, I wonder if the husband knew more
And
than
I
what he
wondered
was
that
putting
too.
on.
Yep. I was like, can he understand a little bit more of what y'all are saying that y'all may think? Because the audacity for y'all to sit here in this man's face and have a full blown conversation over to the side in a language that you know he cannot fully understand. That was so rude to me.
Whew. Hey, Song. in some ways, I wouldn't say he shoot his shot, but he was like, do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't moved away? To your point, she said, you're in love with the girl I used to be. And she's like, that's Nayoung. I'm Nora now. And when he told her, you're someone who leaves to him, and then for Arthur, he's like, you're someone who stays. I was like, oh my gosh. And then they start talking about who they could have been in past lives, from a queen and her henchmen or a political marriage. What's the significance to you of this conversation?
Closure.
Yep.
Like I said, needed closure. Did it have to happen in the husband's face? It did not. That was a choice. And that was a rude choice. Because if anything, part of me wonders sometimes if we give women a little bit more grace in this way than we would give a man. Like if a man had his wife sitting over next to him and he was sitting here speaking to this other woman that he had known since he was a child, who has a crush on him, who came to see him, well, we'd be like, bastard. You know what I'm saying? But we have been more upset as an audience because Arthur gave her a lot of grace and space.
He did. And even in the beginning, the opening of the film, it was like people watching, and they were like, who are these three people?
Yes.
In this conversation? Like, who are they to each other?
Yes. 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 That was a fun way to open.
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a, not a trick move, but it was a way to get you leaning to one side. They make it back to their apartment. I'm telling you, the uncertainty on Arthur's face when Nora walked Hae-sung out that door, that was
He did
acting.
not know if she was coming back.
He did not know if his wife was coming back. Girl, when Hae-sung was like, what about the next life? And she said, I don't know. And he was like, me either. See you then. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
He was like, I didn't get to have you in this life, but what about the next one?
That's a line.
Girl.
That's
Girl.
a hell of a line. That's up there with Casper, can I keep you, if I'm honest. that was the love line of my youth. Can I keep you? Listen, that was a line. That was a bar.
See you then.
Yep.
The way she was sobbing, I actually was surprised of that reaction. The final reaction that we got between the two, I was not expecting that.
Well, he said she was a crybaby when she was a kid, so I guess she is reverting back to that version.
Do you feel like she was mourning what could have been or the end of their friendship?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. I hope it's not the end of their friendship. Like, I hope that her and Arthur really go over to Seoul and, when he has, again, hopefully moved on with his life and is past this version of having this want and desire for her, they can all become friends. So I hope it's not the complete end, but it probably is the mourning of like what could have been, because part of her, I feel like, was holding her breath during this time too, of like, what am I going to do? How do I feel? How does this make me feel? What comes up when I'm around him? And I'm glad that we're going to leave it to the next life.
I disagree on them continuing their friendship. I feel like this should be it for them.
Okay.
The final question I have for you is, do you think they had enough between them to create a relationship?
Well, that's the thing. That's why I said earlier, I feel like what they had was a fantasy. You don't know what the reality looks like until you're in it. And we never got close enough. They never got close enough. And so, yeah, they had a great connection, but that doesn't mean that we're going to be great romantically. It could be stale. We may not live well together. We may not have the same desires for family and what that looks like. I may spend too much time doing things that you need me or more around for. Because, that was one thing her and her husband bonded a lot over was work. And he understood her drive as a writer. So, I mean, there was never enough. They never actually dated to know whether or not anything romantically between them would work. So
And you can't do life with anybody. Like,
you can't.
it is life be life in, and not everybody's equipped to have the patience, the love,
Stick with Arthur, baby. Because that man held you
the
while you
commitment.
sobbed over another man leaving. So,
Girl.
again, the grace that he showed. And I will give this to Arthur, especially when I was watching it, because I think at a certain point in time, I would have thought, like, that's played. You know what I'm saying? Like, she's playing you a little bit. But no, I think inevitably what I felt when this wrapped was is that when you love somebody, when you love them beyond what they give you or what your relationship with them is,
Mm,
you give more grace and space to what they need. And I think
yeah.
he knew that she needed this. He knew she needed this closure on this chapter of her life and history with this man.
Mm.
And
He saw her.
yes,
He saw her, and
that's a great
that was
partner.
super important. Yeah.
That is a once in a lifetime partner right there.
Yeah. All right, Ashley, what are your final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Like I said, this was a very realistic portrayal to me of that childhood nostalgia and what could have been and reconnection and just the reality of the fact, because sometimes I think people think about these types of things as like regrets, but life inevitably unfolds the way that I think it should unfold.
Yes,
And you
everything works
shouldn't,
out together for the good.
exactly, you shouldn't look at these, oh, what could have been, as a regret, or like, oh, this is really the person I was supposed to be with, because every decision you're making is leading you to what is real and best for you. And I think it was a good messaging with that in this film, and that her and Hae Song is not what it needs to be right now. Even if, let's say, later on in life, I'm single again, you're single again, and even we get connected in our 70s and we live out our golden years together, whatever. At this point in time in life, this is what it is. You go on in peace, I'll go on in peace, and let's live our best lives. And I loved that message. So those are my final thoughts.
Yeah. My final thoughts, they never kissed.
Thank God
um,
his Uber showed up in time.
oh, yeah. And as I mentioned before, I'm glad that they didn't make plans for the future. To your point earlier, it's giving for us international film vibes of like, there aren't happily ever afters. This is more real life. I appreciate that overall. Nora, she had confidence in her decisions.
Yep.
She didn't show a level of indecision that I feel like I don't think not everybody would have been able to do that. You know what I mean?
Right. Or
And
at
I
least
think it was
tested them waters.
exactly. And honestly, you didn't need two indecisive people in this situation either, because Hae Song had that down packed. I have a soft spot for him because I felt like his love for her was very pure. I mean, and when a guy falls in love, it's hard to shake that shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's
And
hard
that's
for
what,
women too. We have to
but
deal
I
with it in different
appreciated that.
ways. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when it comes to marriage and building a life, love is super important, but it is not everything.
Not
It's like,
enough.
it's not enough. And you have to be able to make decisions with people. You got to have a level of trust and respect, because, those things are also can be lost and be really hard to regain. Like, it's just a lot that goes on in the mechanics of a relationship. And we are in a generation that's different from previous generations because women have options.
Yep.
The reason why your mammy and pappy were together for years is because there weren't many options.
She couldn't even open a checking account.
Couldn't get a credit card, couldn't sign for a car, couldn't get a driver's license.
There was a time where your husband had to be with you at your doctor's appointment. They couldn't even deliver news to you without talking to your husband about it first.
And, times 10 for women of color. And depending on what country you're living in the caste system that you live in, there's even more limited opportunities. So building a life with someone is important, and it's important to do it with the right person. And I appreciated Nora's resolve on that front.
Absolutely. Arthur was a real one.
All right, Ashley, let's go ahead and get into our hidden gems.
All right. I have three, technically four. My first one is The Gentleman, the series on Netflix that just dropped not too long ago. I swear Netflix has had me in a chokehold between The Last Airbender, all these things I've been watching lately.
The Last Airbender is getting all types of crap by loyal
It did not get
fans.
good reviews, I'm aware. Since I never watched the animated version and all that, I came in pretty cold. But I understood the criticism. But The Gentleman is a Guy Ritchie series. It actually
My
is
boo.
a basically he did a 2019 film, and this is kind of a reimagining, I guess, of that film. It's in the same universe. The storyline's a little different, and it's 8 episodes. I enjoyed this series so much I rewatched it multiple times
Oh, really? You
because
know,
I
Theo's
just
my boo, so I'm
yes,
here
and
for
Theo
it.
is eye candy, obviously, but I don't know. There's something about the mechanics of the series and the way that it unfolds and the story, everything that I just really enjoy. And I just feel like I want to keep catching things that I didn't catch on previous watches. And I don't know, I just really,
So there's depth there.
yeah, I mean, I just enjoy it. Like it's one of those series that just captured me and I was like, okay, I'm down for this ride and clearly I want to take it a few times. It's your aristocracy mixed with the world of drug dealing basically. So you
Mafia.
yeah, I mean, you kind of got the bougie, and then you got a life of crime. So it's a
Yeah,
nice little mixture, and I enjoyed the ride of it. So that's my first hidden gem. My second, Delora, I think you and I shared this, was Damsel
we do.
on Netflix. Millie Bobby Brown in an action role,
Yep.
not quite a fairy tale, even
Not
though
quite.
it starts off that way. You know what's so funny too is Nick Robinson is in this, and I literally was watching Love Victor series on Hulu, and I was like, "Where is Nick Robinson? I haven't seen him in forever." And then
I
this is
love
what he's in.
him. He was in everything, everything.
Everything is one of my favorite rom-coms of all time.
And
Even though it's not really
honestly,
calm, just rom.
it is Rom. And Deep Cut, I used to watch him on Melissa and Joey on, it used to be on
Mm-hmm.
ABC Family.
Yeah, he was one of the kids.
Yep.
But this story was just interesting to me. Angela Bassett is even in this.
Yep.
Um, and it's just interesting about like sacrifice and there's the fantasticalness of it with dragons and just,
Yeah.
it's right in our wheelhouse of like
Pretty much.
fantasy and action and there were moments I was like GOT would never,
Of course not. Of course not. But it was a lot of fun because, like, I love a good, like, it reminds me of like Hansel and Gretel from several
Yes.
years ago.
Yep.
Even Dungeons and Dragons, like, it's in that vein of like fantasy, but it doesn't take itself too seriously.
Mm-hmm.
But very entertaining. Actually, Guy
Very.
Ritchie directed one. He did the author, King Arthur and the Sword, I think.
Oh yeah, with the one dude who was had a long time series. I can't think of his name right now because he was in the original Gentleman, the guy that we're talking about from King Arthur, that actor. I can't think of his name. He did a movie years ago with Katie Holmes, and I've never forgiven him for that role.
Yeah, it was King Arthur, The Legend of the Sword. We had Charlie Hannum
Yep, Charlie
or
Hunnam.
Hunnam.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
he was originally cast as Christian Grey,
I
and
know.
he dropped out.
He was like the nudity. It's the nudity for me. And then my last 1/2 hidden gems is the Code 8 series, which is 2 films now that have come out, and it is Robbie Amell and his cousin, who I'm blanking on his name right now, but they're also like the producers of it, all this. And this again is fantasy because you're coming into a world where people have powers, but it's at a point where society is oppressing the people who have powers and trying to keep them from being able to hold down
This is an older
jobs.
series,
The
though.
first movie came out a couple years ago, but the second movie is new. The
Okay.
reason why I went back and watched the first one was because I saw the second one. I was like, oh, I got to go back and watch the first one. And we know Robbie from, we were just watching Upload on Amazon Prime and
Yep.
other things he's been in, but this was a departure because again, it's just a little bit more action, and they're both kind of starring in it, but in different ways. So I don't want to give too much away, but just know that if you like fantasy, if you like a little bit of the mutant territory, right, of having special powers, I think you'll enjoy this ride as well. So those are my hidden gems. What about you, Delora?
As you mentioned, Damsel, available on Netflix. It was really entertaining. I thought Millie Bobby Brown did a great job. And shout out to Robin Wright. I always love her in a fantasy moment.
She's
Shout out
so
Princess
intense.
Bride. And then a new single by Willow. Yes, the offspring of Will Smith and Jada. Her new song, Symptom of Life. Willow, I love her music. Some of it can be a little bit out there, but she got some bops. And I love a good alternative moment. This one isn't as rock as her previous sounds, but it's beautiful. I love her artistry. I love, you know, people always give the Smith kids a hard time, but I think one of the best parenting advice that Will Smith has had through the years in interviews, especially when it comes to their style or just how they expose their kids to different things. He was like, if it's not hurting nobody, they can do whatever they want. Like, so when Willow cut her hair, or they might wear something crazy, but I think that level of freedom for Black children is important. I don't think we get a
Yeah.
lot of that in our community. There's a lot of taught restrictions, and the weight of the world is on our shoulders at a very young age.
They're
And
also the product of superstars, and that's just hard
that's
being in
how.
that bubble in and of itself. But to your point, they do seem like they both turned out to be great humans. So good job.
So I appreciate her artistry. Shout out Willow. That's all I got, Ashley.
Alrighty, guys. Well, thank you for sticking with us for this recap of past lives. We hope you enjoyed it. If you have not seen the film yet, it is available on what streamers, Delora?
It's on Paramount Plus, or you can get it on Apple Plus or Amazon for a fee, I'm sure.
All right. Well, enjoy that film. We will definitely be getting
Or your library, because
or
I
your
have
local
Hoopla,
library.
and based off my number of credits this month, I could easily borrow it. So
Thank you for that reminder always about the resources of our local libraries.
yes, movies and music, as
Yes.
well as books.
We will definitely be getting your thoughts on this when we do our post, guys, but feel free to share it with us as always, and share this episode with your friends, family, loved ones, everyone. We appreciate it. We will be back. But in the meantime, as always, be blessed.
Bye.